How would you like if you could just relax on the beach and never have to work again while money just kept dropping? Now compare this to the life of a regular guy who believes he has to keep working harder at his job to get regular income. While you might feel you can relate more to the second guy and yet want to live like the first guy. Robert Kiyosaki, American billionaire businessman, best-selling author, describes wealthy as someone who can stop working and yet sustain financially. Do watch the video till the end to know how you can make that happen. So you all want to be rich, and some of you have been working 40-50 hours a week and simply don't seem to be getting there. Warren Buffett once said, "Risk comes from not knowing what you are doing." In his book, Robert Kiyosaki first goes on to introduce his two dads. By poor dad, he means his biological father, and rich dad refers to Robert's friend Mike's father, from whom they acquired financial wisdom. Robert and Mike both were from Hawaii and belonged to middle-class families then. In their school, all the other children belonged to rich families, and that instilled the urge in both the kids to become rich. Despite the nomenclature, both rich and poor dad used to earn good income, were hardworking and paid bills on time, and both valued education. The difference between the two was their attitude towards money and the way they managed their emotions in making financial decisions. While poor dad did not understand the true definition of being wealthy, the rich dad knew clearly. Wealthy are those who can choose to stop working and yet keep sustaining financially. Poor dad was employed in a government organization and despite earning good income was constantly struggling financially. He believed money to be root of all evil. He was driven by fear and his sole aim was to keep himself employed to get steady income. Poor dad frequently said, "I can't afford it." Poor dad's ambition for Robert was to study hard and get a good job with great benefits and remain there. In contrast to this, rich dad ran multiple businesses and provided employment to many. His formal education was limited only till high school, but ended his career as one of the richest men in Hawaii. He would constantly challenge his brain to think and ask himself, "How can I afford this?" He believed money provided solution to most problems. He advised Robert to get education to learn so as to own companies. At the age of 9, Robert was exposed to both these thought processes. The problem was that rich dad was not rich then, and poor dad was not yet poor. After deliberation, Robert chose to follow advice of his rich dad. The most important advice rich dad gave to young Robert was, while poor and middle class work for money, rich make money work for them. Rich treat money as their employee and ensure their money is working harder than them. This means for rich, their money is working for them 24/7 even when the rich themselves are sleeping. To make this possible, rich work towards strengthening their asset column by minimizing expenses. But before we start implementing this strategy, it's important to understand what are assets. Don't go by the standard definition you learned in school or college. As per Rich Dad, asset is something that puts money in your pocket and liability is anything that puts money out of your pocket. Let's understand this with an example. A house one buys to live in is a liability as it requires payment towards property tax, mortgage, maintenance, etc. On the other hand, a house can be an asset if it's rented out. Rental income is used to pay for its property taxes, mortgage, and maintenance plus some extra bucks to put in owner's pocket. So you see, financial wisdom can differ from standard definition taught in school. From definition we just learned, it's clear that stocks, bond, mutual funds are assets, while car, mortgage, personal loan, credit cards are liability. A piece of real estate can be either an asset or a liability depending on the usage. Rich don't only differ in their discipline in accumulation of assets, their cash flow cycle also differs from other, and this is lesson number 3 from this book. Cash flow cycle consists of income, expense, asset and liability. The movement of money in or out of an entity is called cash flow. In the cash flow cycle of rich, income goes out to asset column first. From whatever is left, they pay towards their expense and liability. The ever-growing column of asset of rich keeps adding to the income as money is earned from assets. Due to this, the asset and income column of rich keeps growing constantly. In contrast to this, in the cash flow cycle of middle class, money from income first goes towards payment of liabilities like mortgage, credit card bills, personal loans, etc., and then towards expenses like grocery. Due to this, they are seldom left with anything to invest in assets. With every growth in income, the liability and expense keep growing and they are stuck in the never-ending cycle of hyper-consumption fueled by bigger income. For the poor, the income and expense in itself is a never-ending cycle and hence money never flows in an asset column. This ensures their financial status remains as is. Another important lesson mentioned in the book is that rich let financial intelligence rule over emotions, while poor and middle class let emotions dictate financial decisions. Poor and middle class are constantly driven by fear of losing job and hence keep working harder. At the same time, their employers pay them just enough for them to stick around. With every raise, their greed grows, leading to wider expenses and liabilities. They end up in the never-ending rat race of earning and spending, driven by fear and greed. Middle class work for following three agencies first and then for themselves. They work for shareholders or owners of the company they are employed with, then for government so as to pay taxes, and then for banks to pay various loans and liabilities, and in the end they pay themselves with whatever is left. Let's look at it this way. From January to March, middle class earns to pay for taxes, income tax along with taxes imposed on various essentials and luxuries generally comes to about 25 to 30% of income. Then from April to July, they earn to pay mortgage payments and other liabilities. Another 6 months' income is just about enough to keep expenses running. Hence, they seldom have money to invest in assets. The rich play this differently and pay themselves first and everyone else the last, and that's the fourth important learning from this book. This is made possible by owning companies or making corporations. The income from assets of companies is used by rich to pay themselves first. The income thus generated by the owner is an expense for the corporation, and the corporation can incur expenses before paying tax. This singular rule makes a huge saving in payment towards taxes. You all know the world's wealthiest: Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Bernard Arnault, and Warren Buffett. Owning successful business is one of the biggest ingredients of their financial success. The approach towards education is another reason why poor remain poor and rich get richer. While poor dad chose to use education simply as an end to acquire a job, in contrast, rich dad believed in learning constantly from markets. Robert believes to be proficient in making right financial decisions, one should gain knowledge of 4 financial subjects, which are accounting, investing, basics of supply and demand, and also have knowledge of prevailing laws. Albert Einstein once said, "Education is what remains after one has forgotten what's learned in the school." Rich believe old ideas are biggest liabilities and thus one must work to keep learning about new ideas, technologies, tools and skills needed towards wealth creation. Thus, it's quite clear that concept of personal finance is taught more at home than in school. Best gift financially literate parents give to their children is curiosity and hunger to succeed financially. If you like this video, do give it a thumbs up and leave your comments for the next book review you would like to see.